Welcome back to the Business from A to Easy podcast. It's me, Zach. We're looking forward to our episode today. We'll be back with Justin and Tucker hopefully in a week or two for our next episode. But today we're going to have our interview. But before we get to our interview, I wanted to talk about our sponsor for today's episode. And of course, you know who that is. It is Coffee Bun Roastery. And so if you need coffee, this is the place to go. I want to go ahead and put the promo on YouTube. Biz A to Easy, BIZA to EZ, and that will get you free shipping on any orders over $30. So make sure you go and order some coffee. You can do the subscription where it shows up every 30 days, or just order a la carte, however you need to do that. But make sure you go over to Coffee Bun Roastery on Facebook or on their website and check them out, order some coffee. Well, I'm excited today to get right into it. Today, we're going to be introducing a 2-time Grammy nominated, 3-time Dove Award winning, 6-time Soloist of the Year, and Ohio native, Mr. Joseph Habedank. Welcome to the
Go,
show.
go Buckeyes. That's all
That's
I can
right. Go
say.
Bucks.
Go
Yeah.
Buckeyes and Skyline Chili. By the way, I'm sitting at home. This is one of my nights off, so I'm in my favorite spot, which is my chair with my heated blanket in springtime. So I'm an old man. But by the way, is this video or just a podcast?
It is video. Hopefully
Okay,
that's all right.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I just
All right. Cool.
wanted because it is video. You guys will know you'll be able to see that I'm lounging tonight,
That's right.
and so yeah. But
That's awesome.
thanks for having me on. Really
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I was hoping that we'd be able to work it out just because in your industry, in the music industry, we've heard a lot about your, of course, your testimony and how the Lord's used different circumstances in your life to be really a blessing to help a lot of people. And then, of course, your songwriting and talent and all that kind of stuff. But instead of talking about the music side of it, I wanted to talk about the business side, and we don't really hear a lot about that. So I appreciate you coming on because it's uh it's something whenever you get into it. We were talking a little bit before, a lot of people kind of see it as a ministry or as business and different things like that. It can kind of get a little bit confusing, but it really is a business. There's a lot of stuff that goes into it and a lot of work that goes into it, for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's like anything else. I mean I think there's layers to it. Um, First and foremost, when I started my solo, some people would call it a career, some people would call it a ministry, which is funny. Both they're both true because it is my career in the sense that it is where I make money, but it also, more importantly, is what God has called me to do. And so, but yeah, I mean, when I started out solo, I didn't really have a plan on financially or from a business aspect what I was going to do. We weren't even an LLC or an S corp at that point. We were just um, literally going out singing on Sunday morning, Sunday night, and putting our money that we made on the weekend into our personal account until somebody came and told us, "Hey, you should probably consider uh, creating a ministry or a business account for your ministry, so that if somebody were to sue you or whatever." Um, that they could only go after one stream of revenue, not both. And I thought, okay, well, that's interesting. So we did that, and we actually did that. I think it was a couple years after we had started. Maybe it was a year after we started. And then Lindsay, at that point, my wife, had quit her job and had come basically on the road to be my manager and business manager. And so she's always run the books. And it's funny you asked me to be on there on this to talk about business. I thought to myself, I probably should have got Lindsay to do it.
Yeah,
She's
no
the
kidding.
she's the brains behind the operation. But we've learned a lot, and one thing we're very big on: we're not a 501(c)(3), we're not a nonprofit, so we're very big on obviously paying our taxes and doing that on time and doing it ahead of time. We pay our taxes quarterly, and we also we're very proactive about tithing. And so there are certain things that are paramount in our business, and one is tithing, and the other one is paying taxes because we believe those are two biblical things for us. Now I know churches, obviously, those kind of the church is a different kind of ministry. It's a 501(c)(3), and so they're tax exempt, and that would be amazing if that were the case
No
for us,
kidding.
but unfortunately it's not.
Yeah, so that's a thing I think a lot of people don't think about because they think in the church world that it's, tax exempt. So I think some people might not even realize that you
Yeah,
shouldn't really be, um, or maybe you could just really have to work some stuff out. But that's the thing with like the LLC or the DBA. You really have to protect yourself because
yeah.
if it's just you, like you said, they can come after everything, and that's if something were to go wrong, that'd be terrible to lose your livelihood and your personal stuff.
Yeah, and for anybody that's watching or listening that doesn't understand the difference is that a church does not charge for not a service, but they don't charge for a like they don't sell things.
Hmm.
A music Christian music artist does sell things. We sell CDs, T-shirts. So because of that, we are a for profit, literally.
Right,
Now, what we could do if we wanted to get around that, we could always say for a donation do
right.
this. But we've always felt that it was the probably the wisest thing for us to do to be a legal liability. I think that's what does LLC stand for?
Limited liability.
Limited liability company
Right,
and a corporation. And then we became an S corporation that helped us on our taxes.
right,
But yeah, it's funny and the balancing the difference between ministry. Ministry is what I do when I'm on the platform, when I'm on
right,
stage, and honestly, my everyday life, how I treat people,
right,
how I interact with people. That's my ministry. My business is, my sales on my merch, as we call it, or
right,
it used to be called CDs. It's not really
right.
CDs. People don't really buy as
Do
many
you have
CDs as they
CDs?
used to. Yeah, we still sell them. In fact, I'm making a new album that's coming out in a few weeks, and we'll have that on CD. We actually have it on a vinyl as well.
Vinyl, yeah.
But we're finding because of the car situation, where the cars are now, they don't have CD players. My car doesn't have one.
Right,
People are asking for these USB drives, which I don't think is. We've never done that because we're trying to push streaming. We want people to stream the music more because the more you stream, and that's another thing that comes down to business. There's not much money to be made there until they've streamed X amount, which is a lot. You got to stream
mm,
a lot to make you. It's not just like a songwriter gets 9 cents per album that is
mm,
sold. But if you wrote it with two other people, you only get 3 cents because it's
gotcha.
split three ways. So streaming is not like that. Streaming is like literally under a penny. So you have to
Wow.
get. It's more about accumulation and a kind of a snowball effect with that. So I just released a song called "Tell the Devil," and it's been my top streamed song, which is funny because it's kind of rowdy, and it's very. I wouldn't say it's rocky necessarily, but it's an upbeat song. The
Right,
language of it is very attitude of telling the devil I'm his child and that kind of thing. But
right.
for whatever reason, it just surpassed Here He Comes on the
Mm,
streaming list, which is crazy because Here He Comes is probably my most popular song. So it's still below. I think it's in the top four all time streams, and it's only been out 5
wow.
months. So
That's awesome.
um, that's where we're trying to push things. We're trying to push things towards streaming because we need that to pick up. And once that picks up, we'll be able to generate a little more income
Yeah.
from that. And so, yeah, that's kind of where things are headed.
Well, I was going to ask a little bit more about that. We'll get back to it here in a minute. But in regards to that, so is that for songs like what you were talking about that you record as the artist, or is that songs that you wrote? Because I know
Well,
you've written for other groups.
yeah, it's both. But you make more as the artist than
Okay.
I would the songwriter.
Right.
There's also a revenue stream for what's called an artist royalty,
Mm,
which every time I'm played on XM, I get X amount. I don't even know what the thing is, but that's one of our largest royalty checks.
mm,
Much more than songwriting, even is my
really.
artist royalties from Sound Exchange because of Enlighten and Sirius XM. So we're very grateful for that. In fact, our check we get that check quarterly, and it comes in next week, and that's always a big help to our
That's the
our
Disney
company
man
and our
file right
ministry.
there.
Yeah,
Disney World
yep.
trip right
Yeah,
there.
I don't use my business for Disney World. I can't. No,
There's
that's
got
a
to be a way to write
that's
it off, right?
that's what do they call it? Misappropriating funds, I
Right.
think. Yeah. No, we do. We pay
That's funny.
ourselves a salary, and every week, Lindsay and I don't take separate salaries. We just take one salary together, and
Right.
that's our Disney money. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think a lot of people just don't think about it that way. Do you guys have any other employees or is it just you two?
We do. We have two employees that are on payroll besides us, and then we're adding somebody else. So we've got our secretary, Heather Singleton, who lives in North Carolina, which is funny because we're in Nashville, but she runs the office from North Carolina. And then we have our bus driver who we haven't really hired yet. He's not, but we're paying him consistently because he's been driving for us. We just got a bus, which, speaking of business, has been the most overwhelming. It's the biggest blessing and also uh, the biggest expense that we've ever had. So it's been a challenging. It's taken a lot of faith for us to because I'm watching how much money is going out
Mm,
on the bus and going, okay, I know I'm doing this for Jesus, but at the end of the day, I gotta pay my bills. So how
right.
do I strategically, save? So we have Heather, our bus driver, and then we're adding a piano player and a tour manager. So he's going to do both jobs. His name's Josh Tomlin. That actually hasn't even been announced yet. We'll probably announce that in the next few weeks. But you can obviously put this up whenever. But I think there's several people who know. But he starts in May, and we're very excited about watching our ministry grow. But again, it does become somewhat of a heavy responsibility when you're responsible for the livelihood of three different families, really. And now my
Right.
secretary, she has a husband who's actually our manager, but he doesn't receive any money from us. He does it for free, but he's got a job, full time job, and so. But when you have the responsibility of making payroll, especially when COVID hit, we never stopped paying our people.
That's
At
awesome.
that time, we only had Heather on payroll, our secretary. We didn't have a bus at that point, thankfully, and we didn't have our Josh at that time as well. So, but we never missed a paycheck, and for her, and I'm really grateful that God, took care of us during that time. And a lot of it's a testament again to Lindsay and the way she ran the business and the way she continues to run the business has been very effective and also very what's the word of not what's the opposite of frivolous frugal. She's 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 ran it very frugally. If that's a word.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's expenses like fuel, I'm sure would be the kicker. You know, you see videos on YouTube or whatever, a guy pumping in his RV and it's going 900, $1,000 to fill it up and man, it's crazy. But I guess
the
that's kind
fuel
of hotel and everything included. So
the fuel is actually, it is a lot, but the thing that gets you the most with buses is the upkeep. So it's the unexpected things like the an oil change can be $1,000,
yeah, that's crazy.
whereas with a car it's less than 100.
Hmm.
Even I've got a nice Volkswagen Atlas, and it's a little over 100 for its oil change, but we just had our engine serviced a few weeks ago, and it was it's a lot of money, and so that's the thing. The fuel I expected, the driver. You got to pay your driver, you got to pay your insurance, you got to pay your obviously your bus payment, and then the upkeep is what gets you. So yeah,
Right.
it's a big it's the highest paid employee is my bus. His name is Jack. So Jack is the highest paid employee. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome. So, you've been singing for a long time. What are you coming up on here? How many years?
So, well, technically, I've been singing. I started singing with my family when I was 5. So, as far as singing
Your whole
on
life.
stage,
Right.
yeah, it's been 30 some years. I've been doing it for a living for the last 20. This is my 21st year. I
Wow.
started when I was 17, and I'm 38 now. So, yeah, it's been an amazing journey. God's always taken really good care of me, and um, there were a few times I had to start over. I remember when I moved from Dayton, Ohio, to Morristown, Tennessee, to sing with the Perrys. I had no money. I probably had maybe $100 in the bank. I don't even know if it was that much, maybe $50. And then when I got married, I put all of the money I had in my account towards our home, the down payment on our home that we still live in, the house that I'm in right now. And so I kind of had to start over financially then, and then I had to start over again. Really, when I lost my job singing with the Perrys because of my addiction, and so I started over. I've really started over three times financially from a business perspective, and it's been. But I will say this: each time that I've started over, God has replenished, sevenfold or whatever, and it's
Right.
been. It's always better than it was the last time,
Right.
and then COVID. You can always count COVID as kind of starting over
Yeah.
financially because obviously we drained a lot of the money that we had saved um, so yeah, I will say this about COVID though. Not only you might have, we did lose our income, but we also lost our expenses. So
Yeah.
we were able to stay pretty consistent there, and was able to put royalties in. The bank royalties kept coming in, so I'm grateful for
Right.
that. And excuse me. A lot of people think that royalties is a lucrative songwriter royalties is not not a steady. I couldn't live on that. I
Right.
just couldn't.
Right.
Even my artist royalties, which are probably quadruple what my songwriter royalties are, I probably couldn't live on those either. So thankfully, touring is where we are able to make our money to pay for our livelihood and for our people. So
Right.
that's our probably our most and we also have a tour sponsor that's amazing that we love so much. We're so grateful for them. They're pretty much the reason we can have a bus. It's a ministry that we take out with us, and they present their ministry, and they basically give us funds to present their ministry. And so
Hmm.
that's such a blessing to us. It's kind of a win-win. We're able to help them by presenting their ministry, and they help us in turn. And so it's a great cause called Destiny Rescue about a child trafficking and
Mm.
Christian organization, and just an amazing ministry. But yeah, there's so many. There's a lot of different streams. But I always say this: what people don't understand about what we do, it costs so much money. If you think about this, people save all year long to go on vacation once a year.
Hmm.
Most people save to go on vacation once a year, and what they're paying for on that vacation is the travel.
Right.
And we do that every week. Every
Yeah.
week we basically work on
Right.
vacation, but we have those vacation expenses, and so that's what I think people don't realize when if you call an artist and they're asking for an X amount of money to cover their expenses, it's not because they're being trying to be greedy. I don't
Right.
know many millionaires in gospel music. I just don't. There's not many of
Right.
them.
Right.
And the ones that are is because they diversified. I think or whatever the word is for when you they have supplemental income
Right.
essentially. They've gotten it from other streams. So, but yeah, it's certainly not a place to get rich.
Yeah. That's crazy. Well, it's definitely a call for sure. I mean,
It
it's
is. I mean, if it wasn't, I'd have quit
yeah.
a long time ago. I mean,
I heard
I
you
really would have.
in another podcast. I heard you talk about how a lot of young people ask how you make it in the industry, and your response was relationships. And I thought that was fascinating because it's the same thing in business. If you're gonna make
Hmm.
money in business, it really doesn't matter what the business is, as long as you have good relationships and you can cultivate those relationships, then that's how you're gonna make it. Is just dealing with
Yeah.
people.
And when I walk into a church or a venue, even if I'm rude to the pastor, the
Right.
music pastor, the people,
Hmm.
or if I'm unkind, or if I'm hard to work with, or even if I'm just aloof, if I'm not even mean, but if I'm just not friendly, if
Right.
I'm quiet or withdrawn, that relationship can't be cultivated, and they're not going to want to have me back. So that then
Right.
cuts into to the future of my ministry and my company. And so relationships are so important. And that's like I said on the other podcast, if our whole faith is based on a relationship with Jesus, if that's so vital in our faith,
Hmm.
then why shouldn't that be as vital in our everyday life? Um,
Yeah. Well, let
so that yeah,
alone, yeah, you burn that bridge and then, oh, you don't want that guy. He's talking to everybody
hmm
else, and it just get out of hand pretty crazy. Yeah.
we've
Yeah.
had a handful of maybe I've been doing this for 10 years on my own. I think I've had two people complain, and we immediately went to those people
Right.
and said, what can we do? We didn't realize, we didn't realize it came across this way. What can we do to make that right? And
Right.
two people in 10 years after, being in 100, 100 to 150 concerts a year, I'm really
Right.
grateful. It's just been two people. But as soon as I find out, I don't just let it go. I go to them and
Right.
make it right and say, because I want to have a good reputation, but more importantly than that, I want to have a good testimony. And,
Right.
um, and so I think that's important in
How'd you
business.
find
And
out? Like a Google review or something?
no, it was somebody that had booked us. I'm just thinking of one instance that we had asked for a dressing room because at the time we didn't have a bus,
Yeah.
and they thought we stayed in the dressing room too long,
Oh,
and so I had to call and apologize, and
right.
and honestly, sadly, they've never had us back.
Hmm.
Um,
So
and there was
yeah,
one other.
that's
So
crazy.
we it was a hot day. It was an outside event. There was air conditioning in the dressing room. So we set up, did our thing, and we went in there and cooled down and got ready and came back out and sang and yeah, but yeah, apparently it rubbed them the wrong way, and we didn't. Had we known, all the other artists on the program that night were on their buses and air conditioning. So it was
Mm.
kind of like we don't have that, so we
Right.
we gotta cool down somewhere. But yeah, it was a learning, and honestly, it was one of the times we go, if we had a bus, this wouldn't have happened.
Right.
It just wouldn't have happened because that's our
Yeah.
space.
Right.
Nobody's going to judge us for being on our bus. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's our
Right.
bus.
Yeah.
So, and
Hopefully Jack
you'd
will
be
save the day.
surprised. Yeah, Jack has saved the day.
That's awesome.
He's also let me down a few times, but
That's
yeah,
funny.
just depends on the week.
Yeah. So most people, their first job is like McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or something like that. And your first job, I guess, was the Perry's, or did you work before that? Or was it Welcome to the
No,
World? Here you go.
I had an interview with. I loved polo clothing, um, polo Ralph Lauren, and I've always liked clothes, and there was an outlet store near my house, 20 minutes from my house. 15 minutes from my house. And I applied there and went and did an interview and never got a call back. And not long after that, I got my job with the Perry. So I almost worked in retail for Polo Ralph Lauren before
Yeah.
that would have been my first job, but I never got it. And yeah, I've always sang. I remember when I was 16, I sang with my family for years, and then they kind of stopped singing and got busy, got involved in our church and stopped traveling as much. And I've always loved the evangelical side of traveling, and I love to travel. I love to go to different churches. I like meeting new people, seeing new things. And so when I was 16 years old, I bought a Chevy Camaro, 1994 Chevy Camaro with 3,600, I think, with my own money, and started driving that little Camaro around West Virginia and Ohio and Indiana, surrounding. I lived in Ohio, so it was the surrounding states. I would
Hmm.
sing in as a soloist, and but I always wanted to sing with a group. I never had the intention to be a solo artist, even back then. It was just
Right.
it was out of default. And that's when I really started. I'd make few $100, every weekend out on the road. And of course, I remember
Oh, yeah.
one day, I made, I don't even remember. I think I sold $1,000 something. That was a huge deal.
Right.
Back then it's still, honestly, still it is a huge deal because sales are just not what they were. But yeah, I started really young, just kind of the kids call it a hustler.
Yeah.
I
Oh, yeah.
hustled, and to me, the funny thing was money was it was just the icing on top of the
Right.
cake because that's
Right.
all I ever wanted to do. I didn't care. I mean, I told Pastor the other night, I tell people a lot. I said I'd do this for free if I could because I
Hmm.
love it. It's what
Right.
I was called to do, but it's also what I love to do.
Right.
And it just so happens that I'm fortunate enough to get to do my passion and what God has instilled in my heart. To get to do. I feel like I was put on this earth to do what I do, and not
Right.
many people get to say that. And so I'm very grateful for that. But yeah, I've always chased the growth and trying to. I knew I was never going to get rich doing this, and I was always okay with that. But I
Right.
also wanted to run our business in a way that was in integrity. We want to have integrity in business. That's paramount.
Right. What was the difference in traveling with a group as opposed to a solo? I mean, I'm sure there's a too many to count, but on the business side, were you? I'm assuming you'd have to be salary, or was it based on
Yeah.
sales, or how did that work?
So when I first started, I got a salary. I was 17 and I got a salary, and honestly, it was less than what I was making on my own as
Yeah,
a soloist. But again, it wasn't about the money; is what God was telling me to do, and so I did it.
right.
And then I think back then we got whoever sold the most at the table. It was me and two other guys. Whoever sold the most got 10%. And
Nice.
then because that became kind of competitive, I
Right.
kind of went to Tracy and was like, "Hey, it's starting to feel kind of competitive. It feels like it's kind of wrong, the way
Right.
we're competing." I said, "So what if we just all took, 2 or 3% of the sale? You'd still be 10%. If we took 3%
Right.
times three, that's 9%. Then you're saving 1%." He ended up doing that. So we all would get
Mm,
3% of the sales on top of and it was never a lot. I remember the weeks of the Quartet convention was when we would sell the most, and that one year we sold a lot, and 3% of that was great, but it wasn't a whole
right.
lot. But yeah, I think the biggest difference between the two, honestly, is there's two things. One is the stage it's very different on stage. You don't really have anybody to feed off of. It's kind of
Right.
just you. And
Yeah.
the second thing would be finances. The finances they're just not as especially at the beginning. They're not as there's only there's a lot less overhead, a lot
Right.
less overhead. So,
Right. But for a 17-year-old, like in a group like that, that's really the benefit is probably going to be the relationships. I mean, you're in with the
hmm
Perrys, so you're rubbing shoulders with the right people. They're hearing you, so that's probably where the biggest benefit for somebody that young is going to be is in building those relationships with people. Did you try to cultivate those as you were out, kind of thinking ahead, or was it just like,
yeah,
I'm just going?
my plan was always to sing with my family until I could sing with a full time quartet or family group, which
Right.
I pretty much did that, except the little solo thing in between. And then when I first got in the industry, because I was so young, I really didn't cultivate the relationships like I should because I was very insecure, but I came across very arrogant.
Mm,
And so that turned a lot of people off. And I think there's still times now where if I'm being completely honest with myself, I'm sure in those insecure times that I still have that it can come across like, oh, he's really sure of himself. When honestly, yeah, I always say I'm probably the most insecure guy in the room. Um, but I think at the beginning of my career, yeah, there were certainly relationships that weren't cultivated because of my pride, or
right.
at least the perception of that. And
Right.
so as the years went on, it really wasn't until I obviously cultivated and created relationships and had friendships, but I really didn't have meaningful relationships until I got clean and sober. Because even though I started with the Perrys, I hadn't used or I wasn't using the pain medicine at that time. About 5 years into it's when it started, and then from there on, it was just kind of like it's really hard to have healthy relationships when you're
Right.
um, struggling with addiction, and so that was always the biggest hang up for me with those relationships. But when I got sober and God delivered me and changed my life, that's when He started showing me the relationship aspect of life. And
Yeah.
it also, I think, has helped me stay clean and sober. Obviously, my relationship with Christ has helped me with that. But the other thing is having a relationship with these guys in recovery,
Yeah.
that I can call, if I'm having a tough day. And honestly, I don't really have the desire anymore to use drugs, but we still have days where we get down, and we don't want those down days, if there's too many of them in a row, to lead
Right.
us to go, hey, there's something that can make me feel a lot better.
Right.
So you try to catch that on the front end, even though, like for instance, 2 months ago, we were having bus trouble, and I was really struggling with the stress of the money and the expenses, and just nothing was going right. And I told Lindsay, I said, as bad as it's been and as discouraging as it's been, I haven't considered using drugs to numb it, and I'm so grateful for that.
Yeah.
But it's because of those relationships that I've created with guys like Russ Taff and so
Hmm.
many others that I have that accountability team,
Accountability.
you know, that is so vital in not just recovery, but also in Christian faith,
Right.
to have integrity. And so, yeah, I mean, I think, I don't even remember what your initial question was, but it's certainly been an amazing journey. I mean, it
Yeah.
really has.
Well, it's the same thing in business. I mean, it's accountability with other people who are you're mentoring or who you're working with or who your mentors are. You know, everybody has those down days. It's like, man, the work's just not here or whatever, and you're trying to figure out all of that stuff. And knowing that somebody else is counting on you or somebody else is watching, it really does give that accountability to just go, all right, I'm in a slump. Let's get out of here, work ourselves out. So it's
Mm.
important. It really is.
And
So
in
go ahead.
business, there's always going to be hurdles. Like a hurdle right now is I have a summer tour where I'm bringing out a guy to open for a guy named Travis Clark. You may know him.
Yeah.
Amazing singer, and was raised in an independent Baptist home, but is just kind of getting his start. And so I'm bringing him out this summer, and I've got almost I think 8 or 9 dates left to fill before the beginning of May because I wanted to do a big announcement. And so booking 8 dates in less than a month's time, it can be very difficult.
Right.
But it's one of those things. Actually, what I just opened up my computer to start working on was looking at different areas where we might be able to present our ministry. And so, yeah, I mean, there's always. I guess my point is, there's always going to be something to do,
Yep.
and you have to stay on top of it, be a good steward of it, and obviously cultivate those relationships.
Yep. So is all of this one business for you, Joseph Habedank Ministries, or is the songwriting separate with the touring separate? Do you have a couple? Are you diversifying, or is it all just under one big lump business?
Well, I have a publishing company that I started back in I think '05 or '06 called Holt
Hmm.
Publishing, and I started that with Matthew Holt. He was with the Perrys at the time. Now he's with the Gaithers, and we still own that company. And it's not extremely lucrative, but we were able to cash out. We were able to split some money we had accumulated over 15 years or so, that allowed us to invest that money into something else. So I invested mine into
Right.
the Quartet Convention. I bought stock in the Quartet Convention and serve on their trustees as one of the trustees there, and it's been a good return of, I think it's around 12%, 12-13%, which has been a good
Yeah.
return on that. But I have the Habeholt Music Publishing. However, there's a difference between publishing money and writer money. So my
Right.
writer money goes straight to Joseph Habedank Ministries, and it's usually more than Habeholt. Habeholt's money goes to Habeholt's account, and then when it's built up enough, we'll split that money. And you kind of I forget the word they used for that when you take money out of the bank, basically. When you distribute, I guess would be a
Yeah.
distribution.
Right.
So yeah, but those are the two companies that I own. Um, so I'm obviously an equal partner in both. Matthew Holt and I own Habeholt, and then Lindsay and I own Joseph Habedank Ministries together. So yeah,
So Habeholt, is that productions you said? A
it's
production company?
publishing.
Oh, publishing. Gotcha.
So when we write a song, it has to be published through somebody.
Right.
The beginning, so anywhere from anything from '04 to 2013 went to Habeholt. Then everything from 2013 to now has gone to Daywind. Now I've just restructured my contract to where we both get 50-50. So Daywind will get half publishing and Habeholt will get half publishing.
That's
And I
awesome.
just actually just restructured that in the last few weeks for my new contract. That way, yes, you get a dollar instead of Daywind keeping that dollar. They keep 50 cents and we keep 50 cents. And so
Yeah.
there's in songwriting there's two revenue streams. There's a publishing stream. Trying to do my two fingers here,
Right.
and then there's the writer stream. So if
Right.
there's $100, you get 50 each, and then that gets split again if you have a. So there's yeah,
Just breaks down.
it's yeah, it's a breakdown,
Yeah.
trickle down in economics.
Right. Well, that's
It's probably
cool
not the same
because then
thing.
you keep it all in house, and it just helps you build
Yeah,
that. You save a dollar, like you said. That definitely adds up over time. It's interesting. It's So I started the window cleaning business back in 2017. And at first, it was just me. I wanted to eat Chick-fil-A whenever I wanted. So I
Yeah.
just wanted some money on the side. And then all of a sudden, sold it and made it bigger than what I could clean myself because I'm full time at a church. So kind of got in trouble, started hiring people, and now it is what it is. But um, what I started to realize is once this thing was rolling and we started getting it going, I started looking around going, why am I paying that company to do that when I can start a business and do that myself? And so now I'm paying
Yep.
myself. And so in your world, there's probably not a ton of opportunities to do stuff like that. But are you looking have you experienced that? Or are you looking at maybe I can start a production company and start producing for yourself and then other people? Or is that anything that you look
Yeah.
at?
Yeah, it's definitely something I've considered. In fact, I watch Shark Tank almost every night,
I love it.
and I'm always thinking, what's that next thing? What I'm always thinking, what's the biggest need in the music industry? I think the biggest need right now in Southern gospel music is management. There's not managers,
Mm,
so there's not really a middleman to be the bad guy when there, for instance, when there's a fire that has to be put out,
right,
so to speak.
right,
I usually call my manager Fred and say, "Hey, I don't really want to get in the weeds on this with this guy or this lady, whoever it is, usually a guy. And can you help me?" And he's got a good way of doing that. But the problem with me is I don't really have time to be
right,
somebody's manager. I don't really have much time to do anything more than what I'm doing right now. But every night when I watch Shark Tank, I think, okay, it's not that I want to be rich, uh,
no,
but I'm thinking, okay, what is the need here in Christianity, in the kingdom? Like, what is the need? What? And I'm always thinking about that. And I really haven't decided yet. I know there is one big need right now in the recovery world, and that is
mm,
for there's no real resources for families. Because if you
mm,
think about it, there's rehab facilities, there's meetings for addicts. There's not really, and there are meetings for families, but besides that, there's not really any sort of resource for families that are
right,
struggling with how to cope with that. And that's something that is more ministry. Probably it probably wouldn't be something that would be a big lucrative thing. It would probably be more of a
right,
nonprofit, but that's something that's kind of been on my heart that eventually I'd like to start a foundation of some sort, maybe to not just help families, but also maybe help send a guy to a good rehab facility, that doesn't have the money to pay for it.
yeah,
And that's something that we've really prayed about in the last few years and something we'll probably eventually do. It's one of my goals that I have that I haven't really achieved yet because I haven't had
right,
time.
right,
But yeah, I mean, I think diversifying your I would say your assets, but your companies is important, and there's certainly things to be made. What I've always struggled with is doing anything outside of music because I know that's what God has called me to do, and
right,
so anything that I do, I want it to be about the music, the message, and the music, and so I'm always looking for ways. I mean, I've also really considered starting a record company
right,
because I think there's some great artists out there that have never been signed, and
mm,
Travis Clark's one of them. There's a
right,
group up in Ohio called Highway 23. It's amazing, and there's just a lot of good talent out there. Derek Loudermilk Band's another one I can think of offhand that have never been signed, and so that's something that I've also considered. And that would probably be something that I will do probably in the next 10, 20 years. I would say Lindsay
right,
and I will probably start a record label. And I don't know what that looks like. I just know it's something we've talked about. And honestly, I don't know how lucrative that would be either, as far as a business, a good business would go. But it is something that I
right,
think God's kind of placed in our hearts. So yeah, I think there's certainly a lot of different things that we are still considering doing in the future.
yeah. That was one of the things I was going to ask is a little bit same line of thinking, but a little bit more where the world is today. Kind of music started on the record, then it went to the cassette, and then the CD, and the 8 track, of course, and all that kind of good stuff. And now we're in the streaming world, and we've talked about that. But have you thought about trying to do any type of vlogging or podcasting or YouTube or stuff? I know you have a YouTube and you do post on there, but is that anything that you've looked at, kind of forward thinking of where this industry's going? Nobody will
Yeah,
start screaming. I don't think. So who
no.
knows what it'll be? But
I've thought a lot about doing a podcast. I think there's two reasons I haven't done it so far. One is time. Again, I always come back to time. My downtime is very important to me. I'm not one of these people that can wake up and work all day long and then go straight to bed. I've got to have some sort of time to watch Shark Tank.
right,
That's my downtime, or watch I love documentaries. I
yeah,
love learning about history and people's stories, and so that's my downtime, and I got to have that. And so right now there's not a lot of space between my work time and my downtime. I don't have a whole lot more space, and ministry obviously, but the podcast thing is certainly something that's been intriguing to me because I'm very inquisitive. I like doing what you're doing. I prefer to ask the questions. I
right,
like kind of getting in the nitty gritty and asking the hard questions that maybe other
mm,
people don't think to ask. In fact, I was talking to my a friend of mine who's a Catholic, and I began to kind of question not really his doctrine, but just like, okay, tell me about how this works and tell me what you believe on this. And honestly, there's some of it that really lines up with Protestant or Reformed. We Reformed or Protestant, whatever we are,
right,
evangelicals.
right,
It lines up, but I began to kind of ask him questions, and he said, "Have you ever considered doing a podcast?" And that was the first time I'd ever considered it. I was like, not really. I was like, should I? He goes, yeah, you asked really good questions. And so I didn't realize that. My wife says I'm Barbara Walters. Barbara Walters always asks those really hard questions that are like they would think people gives people pause. But yeah, I definitely considered it. There's so many things I've considered that I feel like there's so much more to grow in Joseph Habedank Ministries that I haven't really gotten to anything else. I feel like in a lot of ways God has so much more for me in our ministry that I haven't tapped into yet. It's not really a potential thing, but to use that as an
right,
example, I feel like we haven't really tapped in to the full potential of what our ministry can be yet for me to really go in other avenues. So right now I'm really concentrated on growing our ministry. Buying the bus was a big step because
right,
that enables us to bring more people on the road to be able to help us. To gives me more time to be creative, gives me more time to be able to minister. I'm not having to worry about load out sound, load in sound, set up sound. I can go
right,
love on the people and talk to a mom whose son's strung out on drugs and minister to her without having to worry about rolling a cord,
right,
those kind of things. And so right now I'm really focused on the word growth for Lindsay and me both has been very prevalent in our minds in the last 2 or 3 years where I feel like God's saying, this is about to grow and I
yeah,
need you to do X, Y, Z in
that's
order
awesome,
for us to, and I had a buddy of mine that said, I think you need to pray for rain. And I said, or prepare for rain is what he said.
mm,
And I said, what do you mean? He said, God's getting ready to rain. That's, something down on your ministry and you need to be ready.
right,
And we feel that we feel like something, and honestly, there's probably other people that look at it and go, "Oh, he's been really successful, and God's really blessed him." And yet we're feeling like, yeah, but something's coming. So there's
something's
something
coming,
else that God is wanting to do in us, and what is that? And I want to be not only ready, but I want to be listening, and willing to do what He wants in regards to our business and obviously our ministry.
yeah, that's awesome. Well, I'd listen to Over the Road with Joseph Habedank or something, and just the
Yeah.
podcast you film on Jack, and while you're driving place to place, that'd be
That's a good
fun,
idea.
dude.
That's a
That'd be
great
awesome.
idea.
Yeah, I'll give you $1,000 for 10%. No,
Okay. Hey,
a
hey,
little Shark Tank
can
reference.
you do can you do 500 can we do a
I'll tell you,
thousand for 1%? No.
Mr. Wonderful. What do you think about
Take it
royalties?
take it behind the barn and shoot it. That's what he
That's so funny.
yeah. Take it behind the
That's
barn and
awesome.
shoot it. I've actually got a guy I'm bringing out this summer, which I don't know if I've said this yet, but we talked about it beforehand, but a guy named Travis Clark I'm bringing out on the road this summer, and he's got a huge social media following. So I only have, for instance, I have around 15,000 followers on
Right.
Instagram. He's got 300 and some thousand, and
Yeah.
he's not even a full time artist. So I'm looking forward to watching how he creates content on the
Right.
road in order to keep that going. Because he told me he's like, I'll probably be in my bunk a lot on the bus editing videos. So I'm interested to see, you talk about the podcast, made me think of that, doing the podcast on the road. Honestly, right now, the biggest thing is reels. These
Yeah.
reels
Yeah.
are huge right now, and
Right.
I'm having to make myself do a reel every day right now, and I hate it.
Mhm.
I hate being
Yeah.
on video. I don't like it, and
Right.
so but it's what people want. It's what people are looking
It
for, and
is.
so
It's so easy to just sit there and scroll and watch. You're 50 deep, and it's like, what happened? You know.
yeah, where'd
But
that 30 minutes go?
yeah, it's awesome. It really does. It catches people's attention, and that's the thing for me is like I look at that world, and I'm trying to think the same way. People like watching window cleaning for the satisfaction or whatever, and it's like they just get mesmerized to the what is it AMSR or ASMR or whatever. You know
Yeah,
that
the
whole
sounds. Yeah, the
right. You know,
chee, choo, chee, chee. Yeah.
so one of our TikToks had like 3.8 million views or something because people loved it. They just
Wow.
love watching that stuff, and it's crazy, but my mind doesn't go there. But this younger generation, they just it's like in them, and they can make that stuff happen. So that'd be really cool to kind of see that develop with you and him and what that
There's
could kind of turn
actually
into.
a therapy called EMDR
Hmm.
where they play a noise in your ear that is similar to those noises you're going to hear on social media that everybody likes.
Right.
And you have to go to a place of trauma. Let's say you were abused as a kid,
Hmm.
which feels very heavy, but I'm just using that as an example.
Right.
And you, while that noise is being played in your ear, you go back to that time when you were hurt as a child, and you begin to kind of process that differently
Hmm.
because you're thinking of that, and it's pretty fascinating. It's a little controversial. Lindsay's actually done it. We're both very pro Christian therapy, and we believe it's biblical. Proverbs talks a lot about it, and we, we love. I talk to a counselor at least once a month, if not twice a month, and it's helped me keep my mental spirituality, excuse me, in check. And yeah, I'm a big fan of it. But it
Yeah.
reminded me of that when you're talking about those TikToks and those noises. There's actually therapy that goes along with
It's
similar.
crazy.
Yeah, it's
Well,
crazy.
yeah, it's weird. You just check out for a minute and just get your mind on something else, and
Yeah,
it's pretty crazy. Yeah, it's certainly those tingles or whatever everybody talks about. It's like, oh, that one gave me the tingles. That was like the main comment on that, and I was like, that's weird. It was just a dude doing his job, but all
Lindsay
right,
watches a lady down in south of Nashville, Murfreesboro, and she does those videos where she's organizing, but there's noises that go with the organization,
right,
a drawer
hmm
or some keys or
right,
and she'll watch it. She's like, yeah, watch this, and she loves it. Her name's
yeah,
Nikki. The girl's name's Nikki, and
that's
she
awesome.
watches. And she's of course the girl's got like millions of followers, and I'm over
Right,
here singing gospel music, and I got 16,000. I'm like, what am I doing? Like, what is happening?
yeah. You just rattle your keys in your pocket while you're doing the
I
reel or
guess I
something.
don't know. I'm
That's
doing
funny.
something wrong.
That's funny. Um, we'll wrap up here in just a second. I wanted to ask where you travel mainly, I would say Midwest, South, just Southern gospel kind of is the norm. Do you ever go out west, California, Northwest, Washington, that kind of stuff? Do you have much of a following out there?
Yeah, I actually go out to California every year. This is actually the first year I haven't gone in years. And so this year we're going as far out as Colorado. In
Hmm.
fact, you may know it's an independent Baptist church, Castle View Baptist in Castle Rock, Colorado. It's a church plant there, and they've actually grown to. They're getting ready to build a huge sanctuary, and God's really blessed them. And there's a big big independent Baptist church in Kansas as well, liberal Kansas,
Yeah.
ironically enough,
Fellowship.
that I'll be at. Yep, I'll be there
Yeah.
on my way out there. But that's as far west as we're going. But we don't just sing in the South. It's funny. We do sing in the Carolinas and Texas quite a bit, but we do. We probably do half of the states, 25, uh, maybe 30 states out of the 50 every year. So
Yeah.
we're we're pretty much everywhere. We go up north, to Michigan and Ohio and Indiana, Illinois. We'll be in Wisconsin, Mother's Day weekend. So yeah, it's not just the South. It's a lot of different places. And we've been up to Oregon. There's a guy, Stuart Mason, that was at Hiles for a long time. He's got a church out there, and I've been there, and um, it's called Sherwood. I think it's called
Hmm.
Timberline Baptist Church in
Okay.
Sherwood, Oregon. Yeah, Great church.
Ironically enough, Ohio is like a hotspot for Southern gospel music. Like I went to the church I went to growing up. Melissa Brady was there, and then Jim came for a little bit, and then I was neighbors with Paul Lancaster, and
Yeah.
he lived in my subdivision, and it was like there was a ton of people around there, and then of course you're from over there, so it was like there was just a ton of people that seemed to come from that area. Do you have you ever put that together? Have you ever thought about that? Is it
Yeah. The biggest artist ever in Southern gospel music was the Cathedrals, and they were from Stowe, Ohio,
it's
Northern
crazy?
Ohio. Yeah, it's a lot of different. So there's a group called Sold Out that's from Ohio. Yeah, there's a lot of. It's funny. It's of course Jim Brady, as you mentioned, Paul Lancaster's still up there, and um, yeah, it's. Did you go to Kazadale?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. We were
the, I
there.
just
I was at Fellowship with the Brady's. It was where the track league, Fellowship track league. I don't
yeah,
know if yeah,
Wash Pennington, was that
yep,
his name?
yep.
Yeah,
And then oh, what's his name? Oh, he was there for a long time. Maybe Melissa's grandpa or
Jack
dad or something.
Jack
Yeah,
Schuler.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Jack's
Yeah,
a
the
great
Schulers and
man.
all them. Oh, the Isaacs, of course, them too.
These are
Yeah,
from there. Yeah,
it's
it's
crazy.
funny. I have considered that. It's a pretty Ernie Haas still lives up
Yeah,
there. And his group is I think based out of even though they meet, I think the bus meets in Nashville now, but like he flies in
yeah.
from Cleveland, Ohio. But yeah, there's a lot of, and I think that we're probably missing some. There's a group out of Columbus, Ohio called Highway 23. It used to be called, they used to be called something else. Oh, I forget their name, but it's a High Street Baptist in Columbus. Amazing. I mean, one of the best groups out there, and they don't
Hmm.
travel or anything, but there's so much talent
Are
up
they out
up
on
there.
anything? Are they on streaming or anything like that?
Yeah, yeah. If you guys are if you want to go check them out, it's HWY like Highway 23,
Okay.
and they're amazing. You have to go hear them. They do a song called "Who You Are." I think it's called "Who You Are to Me." I think it's a Chris Tomlin song. They're actually more conservative Southern gospel almost, but they do, they'll do some Chris Tomlin more. Chris Tomlin did an album where he did some stuff with country artists, so it's a little more the Christian music, but it's a little more country leaning. But yeah, I mean they're just amazing. There's so much talent up there, and then there's me, who's not
You know,
as talented as the rest of them, but yeah, yeah, it's crazy.
that's funny. One last question. Where's your favorite place that you've been to? Not church. We're not going to open that can of worms, but
Brooklyn
just,
Tabernacle.
oh
I
yeah,
already
I was
know
going
that
to
one.
say
That
that's
one's easy.
crazy.
That
That's,
one's easy.
I listened
Yeah,
to some of their, oh my goodness.
yeah.
Thou, O Lord, and hearing,
Mm.
that's crazy
And you
stuff.
know what? Pastor Cymbala doesn't really get as much credit as the choir, but he's such an amazing preacher. I mean,
Yeah.
I like listening to his preaching as much as I do the choir. It's excellent. But we go there every year. But as far as favorite places I've been, we just did a Hawaii cruise, and Lindsay and I went on our honeymoon on the island of Kauai, on the North Shore, and so we got to go back there for the first time since we got married, which was 13 years ago. And so I would have to say that's probably top of the list. Getting it to go back to the place where we kind of first were husband and wife, for any
Right.
period of time, and so
Right.
that was pretty great. And I love like the Wyoming, Montana's. What's the other state out there that I
Like
love?
Idaho, that kind of stuff.
Idaho, but
Yeah.
Colorado. I love
Oh yeah.
Colorado. I'm really looking forward to being in Colorado in July. Actually, I haven't been to Colorado in probably, I don't know, 15 years. Lindsay's never been.
Oh
So this will
wow.
be our first, and we're taking the bus too, so it'll be fun to be able to watch kind of
That's
from the
awesome.
windows the
Yeah.
Rockies and wake up one day in the Rockies would be pretty sweet. So I'm
Yeah.
excited about that.
That's awesome. Was there anything you want to promote or kind of get out there? Just anything you got coming up or a song?
Well, I've got a new album that's coming out on April the 19th called Autobiography. It's a lot of songs about my life. I actually wrote a song about my home church called The Church, and a song about my parents' divorce on there. So there's a lot of songs about um, my childhood and my life. So hope everybody will go check it out, and hope it'll be a blessing to everybody, and go stream it as many times as
Streaming.
possible. As many
When's
times as
that coming out?
possible. August 9th. I'm sorry, did I say August?
August,
April.
yeah, April.
April 19th. Did I
Okay,
say
so a
August
couple
the first
weeks.
time?
Yeah, no, I you
Oh,
just
okay.
now, not earlier.
Okay.
Yeah,
April 19th. Yeah, Friday, April 19th. And we're really excited. Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, thanks
pretty
for coming
pumped.
on. I appreciate it. Yeah,
Oh
I
yeah, man. My privilege.
the glimpse behind the business side. Hopefully, this will help some people to understand because I think there's a lot of things people don't really understand in the
Yeah.
ministry having to be a business. It has to be to protect yourself and others. So I appreciate you kind of shedding light on the unknown there. So
My privilege, man. I
yeah,
appreciate you covering the topic because it needs to be. I think more people need to realize it is a unfortunately it's a two-way street. You know, just like a church has to pay their pastor or
right,
has to encourages people to tithe. It's kind of the
right,
same with singers who have to say, hey, we might need X amount of dollars to be able to make ends meet. Unfortunately, if you can't do it, we get it. We'll still come, but this is
right.
what we need. And so yeah, so I appreciate you shedding light on that.
Yeah. Well, when you're out here at Silver Dollar City, I'll try to make it down there and maybe go
Oh,
grab
awesome.
Lambert's or something. That'd be cool.
Yeah, it'd be all
Um,
we can go ride a roller coaster.
I was gonna say I try to tell people they don't know Kings Island. They have no idea
Oh,
what a real
it's the
real roller
best.
coaster is like.
It's
So
the best. Well, I mean, honestly, Cedar Point would say
right,
that Kings
we're the
Island's
man.
child's play.
That's
So
true.
yeah, there's some. Ohio's got great singers and they got a great amusement parks,
It's
even
true.
better amusement parks. Yeah, that's the
And
truth.
Skyline Chili. I mean, what else do you need?
And I know, and arguably one of the best college football programs in the world. So we got it all,
It
bro.
is. Yeah. What else do you need? That's
Got it
awesome.
all.
Well,
Yep.
thanks, and I appreciate it.
Hey, you bet, buddy.
All
Thanks
right.
for
Have a
having me.
good day. See ya.
You too.